All right, so on the topic of all these creative people out there who are
Quotation marks.
blaming fans for their lack of good content, as if it's the fans' fault that they put out some shit that was no good. I mean, we're talking people like Kathleen Kennedy, Ryan Johnson,
J.J. Abrams.
JJ, yes,
Alex Kurtzman.
yeah, all the people who
And, of course, the darling of the whole community, Leslie Headland.
Leslie Headland, and even Amanda,
Yeah.
and their response to this negative response to their work as being that the fans are this, that, the other, bigoted one way or the other,
Racists,
alt-right,
bigots, Republicans.
yeah, homophobe, this, that, or the other. No, it's not any of that. It's just the content is just not good, and they need to take ownership of that and take accountability for it.
You got to take accountability? What? That doesn't sound like something Hollywood would do.
Well, it's something that people in general in our current society don't want to take responsibility for their actions.
Right?
You know, and they even want to hide behind the Constitution. Oh, it's my individual rights. No, it's not. There is no individual rights protected in the Constitution. It's the rights of the people as a collective, and people need to get that through their heads. But that's another topic. But it smacks of narcissism to me.
It doesn't smack of it. It is narcissism.
You know, that's what
Straight
narcissists
up.
do. They will blame their
Victims
someone else
or victim.
for their own personal misgivings
Hold on,
and make
hold
it out like there's something wrong with you.
No, I'm going to say victims because we are all victims of what they have done. And I'm not trying to, label myself as a victim.
That's a legit correlation. Yes.
I'm not a victim
You
at
know,
all.
because
It's just
narcissists
we are
will victimize
Yes.
the people around them, and it's no different from victimizing
A
their
person.
target audience for not liking their material. Not taking ownership of, oh well, I'm sorry it wasn't that good, we'll try to do better next time. No, they're like, well then don't come, and what they're doing is they're putting out material for some target audience that is something they've made up in their mind that doesn't even exist.
Exactly.
That is supposed to be the ones who are supporting and making sure that it succeeds, and there's just not enough of it, or it doesn't even exist at all. The target audience that they have perceived,
Imagined.
that they've made up for themselves in their delusional minds. We're not the delusional ones. They are, but they're the ones in a position to produce the content that is just not good, man.
They are the ones that got through the gatekeepers to produce this shite that isn't any good, and I believe, and Eric disagrees, but it's all right, that it's a very much a ego. Look what I did to your beloved franchise. Look what I did. I'm special. I'm important. When they all know that they aren't.
Yeah.
Kathleen Kennedy was a dancing horse and a coffee girl. Ryan Johnson, not much better. And Leslie Headland, oh, it's just a coincidence that she was personal assistant to Harvey Weinstein. But she didn't know nothing about it. Coincidences happen all the time. I don't believe in coincidences. I don't trust coincidences.
And in Leslie's case in particular, for her to take the Star Wars brand and use it as a vehicle to...
She acts like she had a penis. She fucked it hard.
She even said so. I've seen it in interviews. She, in her own words, it was an opportunity for her to invite the world into her headspace.
Gross.
And to do that with the Star Wars brand, not only a disservice to the brand, but a disservice to the fans,
And a disservice to the
a disservice
gays.
to all the poor people that were part of it.
Yeah.
Because it's not their fault that what they were doing was garbage. They were just the ones who were hired to do it.
And what about how about those gays out there that are just trying to live their life and just do their thing and be left the fuck alone, and then they get globbed in with this.
And they're not out there trying to get you into their headspace. So it just.
And what an ego to oh, you got to get into my headspace. The fuck?
Right.
What?
If that's not classic narcissistic behavior, what is it?
Tell us.
Yeah, please tell us. I mean, what do you think of this? Because that's
And
one thing that I've noticed in all of the commentary that's out there with people, expressing their concerns over this, people blaming fans for their work not being good. I haven't heard anyone mention the term narcissism or narcissistic tendencies, and it just seems to me that is exactly what it is, and that's why we're doing this post.
And I'm gonna.
So what do you think?
I'm gonna include Kevin the Feige, because for him to allow two, after Endgame was third, right? Endgame was third cycle, third phase 3.
Phase 3, yeah. Yeah, no. After that, we went
allow
into phase 4 and phase 5.
2 phases of utter shit. Now, they aren't all horrible. I actually liked Shang-Chi and a couple other ones. The Celestials should have been better, but we'll get to that in our review of it. But just god awful movies.
Yeah, and somehow I think in some ways he was railroaded into that through Disney's acquisition and through some of the female execs at Marvel.
But
Victoria Alonso notwithstanding.
But hold on.
But
they got rid of the story group in Marvel that kept things on task for the first 3 phases.
Yeah, which might not have been his decision.
I've heard it was from some places, but hey, if I'm wrong,
I know that I've seen some reports from some people that have worked on some of these films where they had no knowledge or background in the source material, the original comics, like the Eternals or whatever, and they said, great, don't read that stuff. They discouraged them from reading and doing their due diligence into the lore so that they could just tell whatever story they wanted to tell with these properties with no point of reference to their origins in anyway. It just made no sense to me. And in Marvel's case, it just appears that they are truly course correcting. We'll see if it's.
You hope so.
We'll see if it's too little, too late. But with Victoria Alonso gone, that is.
Well, I'm gonna tell you.
That's gonna make an impact on their.
Because you said, is it too late? I'm gonna play the V card and be like, it's never too late.
No, it isn't.
Yeah.
Because comics have gone through slumps. Marvel went through their slumps in the '90s. That almost killed the industry.
Right.
With all the garbage they were putting out, with all the gimmick covers, and to encourage investors to buy multiple copies of the.
Jeez, it sounds like the slabbing that's going on now.
And it was all gimmickry, and the story content was not good in those days. It didn't get back to good work until around 2000 or so. In the early 2000s, there was some really good stuff coming out.
Such as?
Well, that's when the Marvel Max titles hit. That was when Punisher, what's his name?
Frank Castle?
Garth Ennis. Garth Ennis is Punisher.
Okay.
No, there was some good stuff coming out, and a lot of good independent stuff coming out in the early 2000s. And Joe Quesada, whatever you might feel about him these days, when he took over the editor-in-chief job in the early 2000s, he was making some really good decisions. That's when the Ultimate Universe kicked in, Ultimate Spider-Man, Ultimate X-Men, which I wasn't crazy about, but the Ultimate Avengers, which I thought was one of the best reads on the rack at the time. It was really good. And a whole lot of the Ultimate Avengers spilled over into the MCU.
Yes.
It was. A whole, Samuel Jackson specifically.
Yes.
Nick Fury in the Ultimate Universe was a likeness of Samuel L. Jackson. They even approached him about it and asked him if they could use his likeness for the comic, and he said, on one condition, if you ever make a movie out of it, I want to play it. And they said that was the plan all along. So a lot of good stuff was coming out in the early 2000s. But again, like I said, the slump they went through in the 90s almost killed the industry. So it's not like the movies can't go through a slump. It's gonna happen. And they can pull themselves back out of it, because you know why? Because they're Marvel fucking comics.
Yeah.
And they can come back from that.
All right, so
There's worse that they've come back through in their history.
Off track. So let's get back on the narcissists that blaming us for everything.
Yes, I mean, and that is just something that really I just can't. I mean, I spent most of my life as a theater actor. I've known my share of narcissists. I can spot one a mile away, and that is just what it seems to me, that these narcissistic people putting out this content for themselves are blaming other people
when it's not like,
and trying to make out like there's something wrong with their audience because they didn't like what they did.
No, it means it didn't hit. It didn't work.
Right.
Take the L and
it means
make
nobody
it better.
cares about what your personal whatever it is you're going.
But now see, I can say that. Take the L and make it better. But there are so many levels where this stuff should have been caught.
No, and really in the past, some of the stuff that's been put out and flopped like it has, heads would have rolled over that.
Yes.
At the studio, Kathleen Kennedy's Indiana Jones. I mean, really? And she's still there?
Yeah.
No, there was a time. I mean, if a producer put out something that didn't fly, they didn't last long. They were gone.
Yeah.
You know, like heads would have rolled over some shit like that. And I don't understand the difference in the industry that way either. The you know, where these people are being exonerated by their studio heads,
their virtue of their existence,
and it's our problem that we didn't like it.
It's not that they didn't think about things or write it correctly or film it right or
just think it through and develop it
more
enough to make it decent.
But then you cloak it in.
Because I mean, I said this with Tom.
You cloak it, but then
we
they
have a little
cloak it.
disagreement about the Acolyte's basic story and plot. I don't think it was a bad story. I just don't think it was developed nearly enough, and there was a whole lot that could have been done with it and kept the same elements of the story and the same spirit of it, and made it something really decent and fun, or maybe not fun, but quality. It wouldn't have taken much, but it was just so thrown together and so haphazard that it just.
And I don't think it was there was any redeeming quality to it at all. That's just me.
And you're not alone there either, so I'm not.
And I'm not, I'm like, it was god awful. It was just a horrible thing. And I actually watched the last 2 episodes. Now, it wasn't as bad as STD because I didn't want to crawl out of my skin, but it wasn't good. It was more like watching.
Well, you know what?
No, hold on, wait. The episodes I saw, The Acolyte was like watching a train wreck after it had happened, and you're just looking at the debris, and you're going like, "What the fuck happened?"
And you can't help but look and keep watching.
Who did this?
Yeah.
Who thought this was a good idea?
Yeah.
I wish. I've said it in a lot of other videos, and I'll say it more. If I was getting paid that, I would be embarrassed for what went on the screen. I guess what do I have? Humility or ego or pride?
Hubris.
Well, hey,
that's hubris right there.
Good. I got hubris.
Right.
Nothing wrong with that.
And you can have a big ego and still have hubris.
Yeah.
Really. And I'm going to say that, Acolyte is comparable to Star Trek Discovery in that it's just not good Star Wars.
Yes.
It just wasn't good Star Wars.
Just like the sequel trilogy wasn't good Star Wars. Just like Obi-Wan Kenobi was horrible Star Wars.
Yeah, Obi-Wan could have been so much better than it was.
Boba Fett, the Book of Boba Fett, absolutely. Should have been better. Should have been great. Because Star Wars is great. It's a lot of fucking fun. Why do you got to destroy things? And I think that's where it comes from. This fourth wave corporate feminism.
Yes.
They want to kill anything that anybody likes. Why should anybody have fun?
Especially anything that they perceive as patriarchal.
Yes.
Which Star Wars is not patriarchal in and of itself. The
At
Empire
all.
was. the Empire was hella patriarchal, but that was the point of it. That was part of the storytelling. They were all a bunch of white male Eurotrash human boys club for a reason. They were the bad guys.
And now the bad guys are making the shows.
Right. And I mean, at a
That's
time
right. I made
when
a judgment
it was not
call.
fashionable to categorize white male people as the bad guys, that's what the Empire was.
Right.
And the rebellion, if you pay attention, it was everybody else. It wasn't. It was every species. It was every gender. It was male, female, blue, green, furry, whatever the fuck you were.
Why are you picking on Chewbacca again? Just because he doesn't wear pants?
I wasn't picking on him. I was just saying.
Okay, well, you said furry. And
No.
the furry community.
It was an example. Wookiees, Ewoks, whatever the furry things were.
Yes.
Whatever
Whatever the furry things were.
And it's comparable to Lord of the Rings with, the forces of Sauron, which was all orcs,
Yes.
versus the free peoples of Middle Earth, which was everybody else.
Right?
And that is what Star Wars was, at least during the reign of the Empire. Rebels versus Imperials. And besides that, it's always clearly delineated. Good versus evil. Good guys and bad guys. You know who they are.
And see, they want to...
They want to make it all gray, morally gray. And there's
hold
no...
on, wait. But they want to blur that line because they know they're bad people. But they still want to be loved and have the adulation.
Right.
And the free sucky and everything else.
In the case of the Acolyte, I mean, they tried to make it out like Jedi were these bad things, whatever. No. All it could have been was a case of a group of Jedi who fucked up and tried to cover it up. And an isolated incident between this particular group of Jedis, and not that the whole Jedi Order was inherently evil or bad or the bad guys, and do this thing where the Sith were not so bad after all or whatever. No, the Sith were fucking bad.
But here's the other thing. I like the bad guys. I'm a bad guy.
You gotta love the bad guys. The bad guys give you a reason to watch. Because they create the conflict.
Because Stan Lee said, another bad guy, another bad white man, according to some cancel pigs somewhere. Your bad guy makes your good guy better.
Yes. Of course they do. And in case of Darth Vader, one of the greatest bad guys ever conceived in cinema. I mean, everybody says so. I'm not alone there.
Yeah.
And in the prequels, however you want to, whatever you thought of them, at the end, with in the Return of the Sith or the Revenge of the Sith, when he finally gets his Vader suit, and the first thing he says is, "Where's
Return of the
Padme?"
Sith and Revenge of the Jedi, right?
Yeah. But the first thing he says is, "Where's Padme?"
Padme.
In James Earl Jones's voice. That was so great. But and the Emperor telling him, "Oh, she's dead," and the kids died in childbirth and everything, kind of turned him into somewhat of a sympathetic character.
Right.
It put a little insight on some of the things that he would be doing in subsequent years, because he believed the Emperor and until he found out that the Emperor lied to him and that his children were not dead, they were alive after all, and it was Luke's strength of character that gave Vader the strength to pitch the Emperor into the central core of the Death Star.
And die.
Yes.
Not like in the perceived fanfic called the sequel trilogy, where that is two directors, Jar Jar Abrams and little Roundhead Johnson, fighting over Star Wars toys, because those two nerds were the nerds that nerds picked on.
Yeah.
So.
And I'm sorry, Abrams is probably the most overrated
hack
person in the industry these days. I don't know why everybody thinks he's so great. I've never been impressed with hardly anything he's ever done.
I've never been impressed with anything he's ever done.
I started watching Lost when it first hit, and was into it a little bit at first, but it wasn't long before I lost interest because it was going nowhere.
Right?
The fuck is this? And it had this great big following. Oh, Lost. Oh, Lost is the greatest thing. No, what? Are you kidding me? What the?
You mean sort of like Falcon Crest with dragons?
The Game of Thrones.
Yes.
Well, in comparison, Game of Thrones was far and away such a great production. It was one of the best things I've ever seen as far as overall production. It was great.
So.
And it was that popular for a reason.
So.
But
what do you guys think of the cancel pigs and all these people blaming you because you don't like shit that they produce?
Because what they put out was garbage, and you stood up and said so.
Like, share, subscribe, and please leave a comment.